Hello everyone, welcome to Clear Perspective. I'm Serene. The focus of this past weekend has been the CPAC convention. It was different from all previous CPAC conventions because of Trump. The left assumed that the convention was going to be a divisive meeting of bickering Republicans. But when Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, the first speaker, took the stage to open the convention, we saw that it was just the opposite. The morale of the entire convention was extremely high. We saw a number of prominent conservative figures on stage. There were no signs of sadness from losing the presidency. Instead, they were full of passion. Their words were sharp, clever, and struck back at the enemy. In particular, Trump had a 90-minute speech that concluded the convention. Some people think there's a good chance that he may return to the White House again. So today, we will discuss a few highlights of this conference. In Sunday's speech, Representative Jason Chaffetz said that the name liberal is actually a false proposition. The left is good at playing with words. They like to call themselves liberal or progressive, as if they are defending freedom and promoting social progress. But in essence, the left's policies are actually denying or at least diminishing the freedom of the masses. The conservative philosophy, on the contrary, is precisely defending the traditional values of human freedom. So, in a strict sense, calling the left liberal is actually very misleading. The freedom they talk about is actually the ignorance of moral constraints. This is not a trivial dispute about nouns. As an old Chinese saying, a twisted name entails greater evils. Both the left in America and the Chinese Communist Party are very good at this kind of nomenclature, and it has an enormous effect on brainwashing the general public. Therefore, uncovering what is behind these so-called liberals is crucial to awakening the American public. It is also important for Trump to carry out his plans. The second notable highlight was the emergence of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Lastly, just want to remind our friends again that our platform may be restricted on social media. To keep in touch with us, please register your email. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.